I think India is very value for money, but not cheap.
Because this is not really an industry where you could plug and play.
In shoes, it's so technical.
We have
There's so much.
38 components in our shoe.
So when we looked at India, I thought it was tremendous. It was growing so fast. Everybody will wear sneakers. Fashion is global, but also fashion is local.
The power user cohort in India now will have maybe 40-50 shoes.
It was so obvious that everyone was thinking about shoes at some level.
Qualitatively, what did you see in the market? What was the opportunity?
There were not a lot of brands in the mass premium segment as such, where you could offer a great quality shoe and at the same time offer some brand value to the customer.
If you have a particular design set that very evidently can be seen and people can go like, that's a Comet. We're a hospitality company.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Day One podcast, where we focus on journeys and stories of founders and companies that we at Elevation partner with. I am Vaibhav and I have Chirag here with me. Both of us focus on consumer brands within Elevation. And our guests for today are Utkarsh and Dishant, co-founders of Comet Shoes. Comet started out with a vision to create an aspirational footwear brand that resonates with the youth of India. And in a very short span of time, both Gen Zs and fashion conscious millennials of the country have kind of resonated with it, and it has almost led to a cult-like following. Dishant is an alumni of IIT Bombay and Harvard Business School, and he has worked at companies like Bain & Company and Urban Company, whereas Utkarsh graduated from LSE and Kellogg and has spent time at companies like Hotstar as well as Bain & Company, where both of them met each other. Welcome Dishant and Utkarsh, and thank you for joining us on Day One podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Great. I think the best place to start is always the origin story. Utkarsh, we know that your passion for sneakers run very deep. I think that has got something to do with the time you spent in the US. So I just wanted to understand, what was that core insight that you uncovered that gave you this conviction to leave everything in US, come back to India and start a sneaker company? I mean, a little bit color on that will be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always joke with my friends that I did an MBA in sneakers. I spent 2 years in Chicago. My roommate had come from Canada and all he wanted to do was get a job at Nike. So just being around him, I always loved fashion, I always loved shoes, but being around him, we both decided that, this is the best way to spend our 2 years is to just immerse ourselves in the culture of Chicago and the culture of sneakers and the culture of pop, everything that surrounds this. And he went on to work at Nike. He still's there. But I always thought I want to build my career in India. India is where I understand people. So when we looked at India, I thought it was tremendous. It was growing so fast, right? There were people who were consuming, especially when you look at the urban centers. As and when people were getting more and more money, we could see that signaling was becoming so important. You wanted to convey to everybody around you that, hey, I am graduating in life, I am stepping up. And that is something that we've seen very well play out in the developed world already. So when I looked at India, I was thinking, when you look at the sneaker market, sneakers are booming. Everybody will wear sneakers. Fashion is global, but also fashion is local. It just takes some time for it to come. We knew sneakers will come, but when you look at the market, you saw a lot of slightly affordable, cheaper brands, but they were not really doing anything cool for the younger population. They were not really invested in their own product, in their own marketing, in their own storytelling. It wasn't something that you could wear, go out to your friends and then talk about it. That was not there. Something that I felt in the US was prevalent with all the brands so well. And then when you looked at the aspirational brands as such, they were very expensive for India. And I just thought that even though it looks like a very cluttered market from the outside, there's definitely a gap here. There's definitely something that you can create. And if you create it out of passion, because that's what is important. If you want to create aspiration, if you want to create any sort of desire to buy something that you honestly don't need to buy, right? And you want to take it and then signal it to someone, storytelling, the way you convey it, the product that you make, the the passion that you put in it becomes so important. And all of that was, I think, missing. And that was the core insight that India will grow and this gap is there. Sneakers are there. Use that as an asset to make people signal in the society on how fast we're growing as a country, on how fast we're growing as a society.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, those insights are very qualitative, and these insights are really helpful. I'm also thinking, Dishant, both of you are consultants, so you must have had all these qualitative insights and this nuance of customer. But I'm sure there must have been a lot of Excel sheets in play as well, some numbers slicing, dicing, etc. Can you share some insights from numbers qualitatively? What did you see in the market? What was the opportunity? What sort of insights or trends did you see from there?
Yeah, so two trends that I was seeing in the numbers as such. One was that market was growing at around 13 to 14% last 5 years. And secondly, if you look at the price segments, we were seeing some brands which were global entering into India and playing at the very premium price point. Obviously, there are a lot of brands in India which are slightly more massier, but there were not a lot of brands in the mass premium segment as such, where you could offer a great quality shoe and at the same time offer some brand value to the customer. So these two trends we were seeing across and across in our conversations with multiple players across the country, and obviously reading a lot of reports because, as you said, we are ex-consultants, right?
If I may also add, this reminds me that when we were actually thinking of the hypothesis, we went around malls, we went around airports. Whenever we had to board a flight, we used to go an hour before we had to. And we would just ask people, why are you wearing this shoe? When did you buy this shoe? How did you buy this shoe? How many shoes do you have? And it was so obvious that everyone was thinking about shoes at some level. Some people were very obsessed. Some people knew everything about it. But then there were people who were wearing interesting shoes and they were like, it's because a cool friend of mine bought it. And you could see in that small N as well, there was data, there was surveys. We needed that data. We needed that quantitative
I feel
assessment.
shoes is also an interesting category because it's a necessary which you wear every day.
Yeah.
Like a t-shirt, you keep changing. Like you will have 7 t-shirts, you can rotate them throughout the week. But shoe, you will probably not have 7. You'll have 3 to 4 shoes, and it will be everyday wear, it will be an occasion wear, it will be a sports utility wear. So shoes are more closer to your heart than a t-shirt is. So you think more about them. You also are capable of spending more money in them because you will buy them lesser than a t-shirt. So I think that's the reason it's more closer to your heart.
Yeah.
And you explore more in shoes than you explore in other parts, in other accessories.
Yeah.
But while you're saying that, I think the average Indian will probably have 3-4 sneakers. But in our research, at least, we feel that number is also growing
100%.
tremendously. I mean, the power user cohort in India now will have maybe 40-50 shoes. But even when we were doing our customer calls, people talked about all sorts of numbers in that 10 to 20 range. So is that something you were also seeing? And what is driving that? Like, why are people buying more and more footwear?
So we saw when we were, as Utkarsh said, right, we were standing outside malls and speaking to people. We saw that people on average have 7 pieces of footwear. Okay. Now you can divide that by casual and formal and occasion wear, and obviously open footwear and closed footwear. But interestingly, they all said that over time we have added more to the wardrobe. Yeah. We are adding more to the wardrobe than just replacing it. Yeah. And this was also the data that we saw after speaking with couple of marketplaces, that over time people are buying more and more shoes than they used to previously. Like 5 years ago, if you compare your frequency of buying shoes versus now, I think the frequency will be faster now.
And that's the average audience.
Yeah.
So as soon as you start going slightly deeper into any affinity group, anybody who actually thinks about shoes, 7 if it's the average across, then that number has to be in double digits, even more, right? For most people.
I think, this thesis makes a lot of sense. And I think one thing which I have really enjoyed in all our conversations is that, you have this macro thesis on the market, but then if you are an entrepreneur, you have to quickly turn it into a business, and you don't have as many resources to do everything under the sun. So those early design choices, or steps that you take to say this is the sliver I will go after, that becomes extremely critical. I think both of you at several different phases of your journey have taken very interesting design choices, and in my view they've been very, very bold as well. So would love to unpack them a little bit more one by one. Maybe good place to start is, I think, you know just the choice of the shoe form factor and what products to do. So when you started out, it took a lot of time to research and figure out those core silhouettes, whether it was Comet X or the Aeons or the slides for that matter. But then once you had that figured out, then on the designs front we have been very, very experimental. uh, in our view, that's like the true leverage of this D2C world, right? Where you can keep testing designs and try new stuff. But at the same time, it's given a lot of vibrancy to the brand. Some of these styles, like the mango, tiramisu, blackcurrant, they're almost becoming brands in themselves. So, would love to get your perspective. How did this happen, and what have been the benefits on both front end, back end with that decision step?
Yeah, so I'll try to talk about the front end, and I think Dishant, you can pick up the back end. So when we started, we were very clear that we will make one model, and that model has to be the hero model for us. And it came from multiple reasons. One was, when you look at any big shoe brand that has been created in the world, they have icons, they have sub brands that are built on models, right? You cannot have 30 models and then say I'm a shoe brand. You're a fast fashion brand. You're not creating sub brands. So we were very clear, we'll make one model. Second is, we think shoes are extremely technical. We found out they were even more technical than we thought they were when we got in. So if you really want to perfect a model, or you want to perfect a product, you can start small, start with one, make it the best thing you can ever make, and then launch, right? So we were pretty clear on that. And third, I would say, is there is a lot of noise out there, a lot of people trying to get the communication, their messages out to customers. There's only so much attention you can grab, right? If you have a particular design set that very evidently can be seen and people can go like, that's a Comet, right? That becomes very interesting to suddenly break that clutter. If I have 10 different models, all looking different, all shoes looking different, nobody will ever know that that's a Comet shoe. So for us, all of these factors played into, find one model, and we thought it has to be a timeless silhouette. It cannot be a fad. It cannot be something that's prominent today but not tomorrow. So we took a shoe that we believe will stand the test of time. We made that shape, we made that sole, and that was the first model, Comet X. Yeah.
Yeah, similarly on the back end, right? When you're choosing one form factor, and footwear we call it silhouette, you're basically focusing as a company that this is the silhouette for the next 1 year. And what that entails is that there is no zone of compromise. If you are a brand which makes 10 products in a year, you will start compromising because the focus of the company and the team is only limited. You'll compromise with the foam quality, you'll compromise with the sole quality, with the footbed. But when you know this is my product and this will be available in different colors, you can really focus on optimizing for both comfort and fit of that product. Another thing which we focused on from the beginning was we invested a lot of money in molds. Usually footwear brands, if you are a mass footwear brand, you may not really invest in the mold and not really have branding on your mold or trying to differentiate on the mold. But we wanted to create our own sole and offer a unique design in the sole, and that's why we invested a lot of money in creating our own molds. Another thing which helped us in the beginning, because we focused on one silhouette, is just economies of scale. When the worker on the stitching line has to do the same stitching 1,000 times, different colors, but the same stitching 1,000 times, it will inevitably be easier for them and be faster for them. So some economies of scale will kick in. Obviously, at the scale of the company at which we are, it will not really matter financially, but slowly and steadily, it will start mattering for us.
Very interesting. In some way, like at least if I pick up from that back end, the more revenue per SKU you have, the better it gets in the back end. The product will be better quality, plus from a margin point of view, it's accretive
Yeah,
for you.
MOQs will be better. You can negotiate better with your factories, with your second level suppliers, and they'll be also be happier because they know that the workers on the line are trained for this model, so they don't need to teach them again, right? I'll give you a small example. Like on the stitching line and the pasting line, on every station there is a small note card kept about the steps. Whenever a product is changed, they need to change the note card and they train the worker again. So if you have the same product, that really becomes easier for them also to keep implementing it day in, day out.
Sounds almost like an FMCG business in fashion in some way.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. And just to, on that revenue per SKU point, one is the volume. The second is also how you price the product. I think for any early stage company, even that pricing becomes an important decision. Now, at least when we were looking at Comet, we felt, clearly the global leaders, as you mentioned, Utkarsh, are very expensive for the India market. But even Comet, it's not a price point where someone will, make a no-brainer purchase, especially for a new company you're selling online. You need to build that trust. But the approach you guys have taken is that, we know what we are doing with the product. It is of a certain quality. People will pay. Let's do everything around the brand to inspire that trust, make it aspirational. So, you know, how did that happen? We at Elevation definitely believe in it. We feel Indian consumers are not value hunters, not discount hunters, but value conscious. But what was your thought process? Why this price point? How did you arrive at it? Was it qualitative research, experiments? Would love to learn a little bit more about that.
So in a nutshell, it's gut, and I think gut comes from experience, and then you have these layers that you put on top of your own some first principles thinking on it. I think India is very value for money, but not cheap, and there's a distinction there. You can be value for money if you pay something and you feel you get way more for what you paid for. And internally, when we make our products, any design, any shoe, even the slides, for shoes, for example, every time me and my designer sit and finally when the shoe's there, we keep it, we look at it, we're like, is it a 10,000 rupee shoe? And if we feel it's not a 10,000 rupee shoe, it's not going out. We make very few designs. We sample a lot more designs. Only a few go out, right? Same for the model. So India is value for money, and we know that. But on the other hand, there's also aspiration. And I feel this is a clear gut call. I feel the first number on the price matters the most. That's 90% of your decision when you're purchasing. And the 4,000 plus is a number that I feel is pretty aspirational. People will want to talk about it. And it also comes from a function of the cost of the product. Now, you cannot create a great product and sell it for 2,000-3,000 bucks, because in shoes it's so technical, there's so much happening. We make our own soles, for example. There's a lot of cost going into this.
We have 38 components in our shoe.
Yeah, 38 components. It's not like in a t-shirt, it's like, stitcher. Like, shoes are very technical. And if you want to put something out there that's great, it has to be at this price point. So it marries well with the aspiration, it marries well with the value for money if we do it right, and it marries well with the cost of the product. Yeah.
What, in your view, have been the 2-3 things that people really care about? Like, if you're thinking, how does a average customer assess, what should I pay for this shoe? What are the 2-3 things they really care about?
I think first is the look. The look has to be fantastic. But to get a look under 1,000 is also hard. A look is not just a function of what we could think, if you make a good sketch and now it's a good look. But if you want to make it come to life, if you want to put the right components on it, the way it slopes, the way it shapes out, right, the way it bulges out, all of those things are important. And all of those things come only with finesse, only with the right materials. And when you have all of it in place, you will see it as one entity, but there's so much that's gone into it to make it look like that one photo that you're seeing or that one shoe. So I think the first is definitely look. The second has to be comfort. We make fashion sneakers, but both Dishant and I were very clear from day one that we have to be in them all day, every day for the next, I don't know how many years, right? Forever probably. And it has to be damn comfortable, right? We are not screwing up our own feet for this, right? And so second is comfort, and I don't think people buy because of comfort, but I think people definitely spread word of mouth, wear it more often, therefore people see it more often. All of that, the generation that happens after one purchase, which leads to multiple more purchases, happens with comfort. So I think these are the two main things, and then
Yeah, I would just say, obviously look is one, but when you are spending so much time online, you care about the brand, you care about how it's looking on even on Instagram.
Yeah.
Before you even reach to the product look, you care about the brand aesthetics, right? So that we have really focused on, that it should feel premium even before you see the product.
Yeah.
A lot of times we don't even show the product. We just show a teaser of the product coming, and even then consumers are excited. So that I would say will come even before the look of the product. What is the feel and aesthetic of the brand?
Yeah, no, definitely. Your Instagram game is top notch, so kudos for that.
A lot of these calls coming from the gut, related to price or related to the fact that comfort has to be top notch, but we can't talk about comfort. People are not buying us for comfort. Do you think it is because you guys are like the TG for Comet, or in a sense that the founders are the TG of their own company, and then you can come across these gut calls which help you take right decisions? Or do you think it's just stay as close to the real customer, and then that is where your gut develops from?
I think it's an interesting question. Do you need to be a TG to create a good product? We are obviously the one of the TGs, but I don't think you really need to be a TG. Like, you can create a stellar product by iterating. That will be then by iterating. You'll have to take a couple of iterations to reach the right product. But if you are the TG, you can get it right in the first instinct, because in your brain you have done a lot of iterations.
and I think, I think we're very different from a 21-year-old. And that is one of our core TGs. But if you can empathize with your TG, somehow, you go deep into their world, go deep into their mind, right? I think then you can come to these answers as well. But you have to be very perceptive, I think. You have to be very vulnerable to understand how they think.
Yeah, interestingly, we were talking about like sling bags the other day. Not today, but let's say in the future, 2-3 years down the line, should we do sling bags? And we were looking, the only people we spoke to were the youngest ones in our office. We just called them to a room and kept asking them questions about why do they use sling bags? Is it in which websites do you shop from? And I think that relates to what Utkarsh is saying. If you are not the TG, like a 31-year-old may not buy a sling bag, but then you need to talk to your TG and understand what is the psyche, what is that emotional need that the product is fulfilling, then you need to solve for.
I think very interesting beginning of the journey and these building blocks of branding, pricing, product, etc. I think I want to spend some time on, once we realize that some of these core customer insights are gaining traction. Now, how do we scale them? We started selling when we met you guys during this round. We had you'd already started selling. From our side, whenever we did that customer work, that customer love, that early signs of early PMF were just out there for us to see. We did some customer calls to check NPS scores. They were best in class, across categories for a number of D2C brands that we've done this for. It was completely outstanding, best in class. And what was also amazing to see was, even for such a new brand, young brand, nascent brand, people kept on checking social media. They were following it diligently. As I had mentioned earlier, it was almost like a cult. And that gave us at Elevation the confidence that, okay, something interesting is cooking here, and this company has hit early PMF. Internally for you, how was that journey? Were there like some aha moments that gave you that confidence? Were you tracking a metric? How did you come across that, okay, whatever insights we've worked on, now that is gaining traction, customers are liking it, customers are accepting it, and I think we have some early PMF?
So I'm very bad on memory. So Dishant can do the aha moments. But the metrics that we were seeing in the beginning, at least, The first top of the funnel, very, whether people are liking what we're doing, couple were engagement on Instagram. So you're putting your product out there, you're putting your brand out there. Are people resonating? Are people messaging you, DMing you, commenting, liking, bookmarking those things? So you track that. A lot of brands are able to achieve that somehow. That's also possible, but sometimes that doesn't translate into revenue. So obviously revenue is very important. Both have to happen. You can't create something that is so outlandish. Everybody like it, but nobody might buy it, right? So that balance is important. So those were the two big metrics. And then of course, you start going deeper. Reviews. We still read all the reviews on Slack. We have the review channel. If any reviews come, we read it. Probably we have a turnaround time of like 15 minutes. If I'm in a meeting and a review comes, somehow I just have to pick up my phone and read the review. We've been doing that since day one. Second is returns. So we allow for returns in 7 days of getting the product. We used to see how many people actually returning the product, because that's a very important sign. And then third is return on ad spends. How much money are you spending to acquire a customer? So these 5, I would say, overall metrics are very important and still are the most important for us to see. We're still early. So it's still early traction in a way. We're still figuring out these 5 metrics. Yeah.
Yeah, on the aha moments, I have 2 stories to share. So Mango was our first drop, but we had launched Mango at the time of launch, right? So we didn't even have 1,000 followers on Instagram by then. But by the time we had launched Jugnu, we had, I think, a couple of thousand followers, and it was a second drop. And that we were kind of unsure about, will people line up, what is the response going to be like. And we usually launch our drops at 6 p.m. on a Thursday or a Friday. And Jugnu also we had launched at 6 p.m. on a Thursday. And we were all huddled up in a small room and sitting together, and we saw quite a lot of shoes being sold from 6 p.m. to 6:05 p.m. So I think that was the first aha moment for us. We felt something is working. Yeah. What we are creating, people want, they desire, and they are lining up for it. And imagine it's very hard for a founder sitting in an office to understand what people might be behaving when they're sitting at their home, right? Because we are not running a store, we are not running an offline store. But when people line up, it gives you some confidence that kuch acha ho raha hai. Something is working here. So there is some PMF, right? Yeah, PMF hota hai, nahi hota. It's easily, there is a demarcation. Yeah. There is a demarcation line ki hai ya nahi hai. It's a gut feeling, but it's also a clear gut feeling. Yeah. That was one. Second story is, so one of my seniors at Urban Company had told me how does he define TG and PMF. He had told me that your TG is the person who will come and knock at your door when you are out of stock. And that really happened with us last month, where we didn't have a lot of stock to sell. And a lot of people messaged us, emailed us that we want these shoes back in stock, and commented on Instagram also. So that is also a moment to realize that, people are not able to find any alternative to what we have in the market, and they're going out of their way to let us know that we really want this back in stock.
I think both these things we've read in Instagram reviews. The third thing I've started seeing on Comet for the first time is day X of requesting international shipping. It's an Instagram
No,
trend.
also day X of requesting you to restock or drop.
Okay.
That also shows up. There's some guy who's on day 70 something, on our Spacebounds, there's Silver Shoe.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You'll have to satisfy them at some point though, otherwise this will become a disappointment.
No comment, no comments, no comments.
Great. I think what another point that I wanted to cover was, as the company is scaling from here, of course, up until now, both of you guys have been the center of everything that you've been doing. But as you scale from here, hiring a strong team also becomes a key priority. So just wanted to understand, who are the key people in your team today? What are you looking for in key team members? And it's a very cultural thing. So as you kind of want to build the business big, you need a larger team. Any frameworks you have around, what are the sort of people that will do well, that will not do well? What are the kind of people that fit into the Comet culture? Any thoughts, frameworks, ideas around that, if you can share with us?
So Absolutely agreed. I think second layer of hiring is exactly what we are thinking about right now. Even with the people we have today, nurturing them, developing them to be that second layer is extremely important. When it comes to culture, we think about a few things. We wrote a culture doc 1 month in or something, where we were like, these are the 7, 8 things that everybody should imbibe. A lot of it was about obsession, about knowing how important your role is in the company, and without you, how the whole company sort of breaks. So the obsession, following up, taking ownership, a lot of tactical stuff was there. And then we always talk about two other things in the company. One is we always talk about how we're a hospitality company. So we just don't sell a product in shoes. We sell everything around it, right? So the culture has to be with every person in the team that whatever you're doing, at some level, it's gonna go and hit the customer. It might be direct or indirect. And a customer goes through a very long journey. It might be Insta first, then website, then making a purchase consideration, then buying the shoe, then receiving the shoe. Maybe something breaks in the middle, reaching out to customer support. Then going after that and like exchange, maybe size is not working, or hey, I need the other ones in stock now because I really like your shoes. There's just so much going on. So this hospitality company culture has to be built inside. And of course the second is, and we come from like you said, consulting backgrounds and these kind of jobs, so it has to be a culture of absolute ownership, right, of absolute commitment, that if you're here, you've been hired for a particular reason and you have a job. And we don't think about age. At a young age, we were given a lot of ownership in our jobs, and we hire a lot of people who are under 24 as well. So we always think, if you've been given a job, we think you can develop into something of a very good leader. So that is how we think about culture in the company. Do you want to talk about?
Yeah, on the hiring that we have done, a couple of learnings for us also that has happened over the months. I think one learning that has been there is, since Utkarsh and me both aren't from D2C, we both aren't from footwear either, but we have been at consumer companies. We wanted to optimize for both D2C and footwear. So we hired a lot for experience. We hired a lot for past experience, even within the same category and the same country. Let's say you want to source from a particular country. Do you have experience there? Do you have the stage experience of the startup? So, but over time we realized that we need to check for structured thinking and problem solving as well. It cannot just be experience. You have to have a mix of both the things. One role specifically that I was looking at, hiring the sourcing lead, and I remember interviewing like 70 people for the role, and eventually not liking anybody or not going through with anybody was because of this, that even though we were hiring for experience, we were not able to get that problem solving and structured thinking quality in that person. So that has been a learning for us. How do we find the right balance in people? Because this is not really an industry where you could plug and play. You need some knowledge. It is a technical product. You need some knowledge, but at the same time, you should be able to develop and adapt to the culture of the company, to the requirement of the stage of the company.
Yeah.
One of the roles that we really struggled with in the beginning was a designer. In India, most people do not design their products. They go to China or they go abroad, they see an existing design, they pick it up, they put their logo on it or they put their brand on it and they sell it. Like we said in the beginning, we were very clear, we'll design this product end to end. Just finding that one person, in probably there are like 10 designers in India, but finding your fit also, who fits into your culture, was super hard. So we actually took a very different call on that. We hired a fresher because we think we can do it, at least to set the vision. And I can't sketch, but I can set the concept and the vision. And if we believe the skill set that we have, both of us, is an eye for a product. What is a good product, right? So if you can conceptualize it and you can finish it, then somebody can help you sort of build it out. And now, obviously, like I said, we're nurturing him into becoming a great leader, and we believe he can be one of the best designers in the country going forward.
That's awesome. I mean, someone joining in as a fresher, getting a chance to build at this platform, I'm sure a lot more is on track for him, and it's going to be a very fun ride. I think on that note, even for both of you, as you mentioned, it's still early days in our journey, year one, year two. You have your eyes on all of those metrics that you mentioned. Customer love is important. So I'm guessing there's not a lot of time to think meta right now in terms of what can this become. You still have to get things done every day. But for both of you, like, how do you see the business shaping up in 5-10 years? What would give you happiness at that point? And are there some capabilities you feel we need to build? This is how the company should shape up. Any thoughts around Comet as an organization? How do you see it shaping up as an institution over time?
Yeah, I think the 5-year vision or the 10-year vision would be, as we have been talking over the last 30-40 minutes. As you can see, we are craving customer love. Yeah. We are craving that good review. We're craving that message from the customer that we really enjoyed wearing your shoes. We really love your designs. So I would just extrapolate that and say, we want to be the most loved sneaker brand in the country. I think that would really be the vision, and obviously that will come with scale. We'll have to have some sort of scale. We'll have to have some sort of presence in tier 1, tier 2, online, offline marketplaces. But I would say the 10-year vision would be the most loved sneaker brand of India.
On the capabilities, I think 3 capabilities we believe we're building, we're exercising. One is design. There's a lot of gut and subjectivity involved in design, but we love to, extend the boundaries of it as much as we can. We love to, I think, as founders, we need to be very involved in it as well. Yeah. But the whole team should start having an eye for design. If you want to put something on Insta, if you want to get people's opinions also, is this looking good or not? You want everyone to start exercising this muscle a lot. So every time we have, let's say, a product portfolio that we're thinking of launching, I call everybody from the team to come and give their thoughts on it. And honestly, like at some point, you sort of know what you want to do, but it's very important that everybody starts exercising that muscle as well. I also think design is not purely subjective. It can be learnt. There's a lot of inputs that go into making great design. One is great amount of research. When you do a great amount of research, you are exposed to so many things that over time you start realizing what is good and what is not good. Right? So one is that. And I think this is a capability that we will build out for sure. Second is brand. At the end of the day, that is one of the most important things that we want to create, Comet. So how we think about our Instagram, how we think about just what not to do. I think one of the biggest things in brand is what not to do. You can only do a few things, and you have to do them extremely well. And that is what brand building is. And finally, I think product obsession. Like yesterday I spent the entire day probably on product. That's it. Like literally 2 shoes the whole day with 2 other people. We were just looking at, this white shade or that white shade, or like that much level of or this graining of the leather or that graining of the leather. And at that level, I think if you're so obsessed, you can create beautiful things. So I want everybody who's thinking about product in our company also to be imbibing that level of obsession. We have one of the principles in our culture. It's called God is in the details. And I think it's a phrase everybody's heard. But that is the most important thing in building a product. Like you have passion and you have God is in the details. And that will create magic.
By the way, everyone's heard devil is in the details. It's an interesting take on that.
Yeah, no. It's the good stuff.
Awesome. No, I think that's a very exciting vision to have. Most loved sneaker brand of India, and to get their design, product obsession, and brand, I think seems like an interesting course. Maybe I would just add distribution muscle somewhere there, but we'll get there at some point probably. Lastly, I think, any 2, 3 big learnings you've had thus far in the journey. I mean, a lot of the listeners on this podcast are early stage entrepreneurs who are figuring out how to get the business started. Any learnings you've had which you feel, someone should have told you earlier on, or now as you build forward, you feel it's very important to keep in mind.
Yeah, I would say there is always a good time to pursue a particular idea or do a particular startup. So for us, what has worked well is why now. Why did we have to launch Comet in this year and not do it 5 years earlier or 5 years later? Because 5 years earlier was probably too early, and 5 years later somebody would have come and taken the market. So there's always a very interesting timeline in a market journey where you realize that the consumer behavior is changing, or the GDP per capita is hitting a certain number, or it is a new technology like the Apple App Store has come, so a lot of ideas will come and a lot of startups will be built around that, or a certain change in consumer behavior will happen, which happened in sneakers. Like consumers in India followed a lot of what was happening in the West, and slowly sneakers started coming to India in the last, like, late 2018, 2019. So that is one. Why now is very important. Secondly, I would say, which has, like Utkarsh was saying, right, God is in the details. So I was listening to this podcast about Walt Disney's life recently, and an incident really stood out for me. So Walt Disney was launching Disneyland, I think 30 years into his career, and he he was that was the most important day of his life. Like, his daughter quoted that, "I haven't not seen this guy as happy ever." And he was sitting and watching the fireworks, and you won't believe he was counting the number of shots in the air to make sure that what the guy had promised, were they delivering or not. Um, so if a man like him, 30 years into his career, was still obsessed about the details, then I think all of us should be obsessed about the details. And what we try to inculcate at Comet is the same. Like, we try to really obsess about the details. And me and Utkarsh also, as founders, we try to go as deep as possible in every aspect of the business, and be detail oriented.
I'll say one last. I think one is about be creative. Don't be confined in a box. Don't look at, when we were starting this, right? There were a lot of Excels. There was a lot of, oh, 2000 is the average price point of a shoe. Launch at 2000. White shoes sell the most. Launch white shoes. There's a lot of things that can be told to you in reports in Excel. But be creative. Think outside the box. If you really feel something is resonating with you, it's very likely to resonate with a lot of other people as well. So when we do these drops like the mango shoe, obviously a lot of people around us were like, what are you making? But for us, it was very clear. We'll create something that nobody's seen, and we'll put our passion in it. Like, there's a story to it. There's so much you can do. So that is also something, if you want to stand out, if you want to be authentic, be a little creative. And be creative, I think, in even the process that you follow sometimes. Like, this Indian word jugaad is literally creativity. You figure out ways to get shit done, right? Be creative everywhere. That's going to lead to good things. Yeah.
Awesome. No, it's been wonderful having both of you. And, I think the journey thus far, even for Comet, has been incredibly interesting. Very excited to partner with you on this journey and see what lies ahead. Thank you for taking out the time today. And
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Chirag. Thanks, Vaibhav.
Thank you.